Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's John here again with Cine Park Rangers, and today we're going to be talking about Jurassic Park and Jurassic World in Universal Studios Orlando. And if you're new here, consider grabbing that subscribe button for us, click the notification bell, click a like on this video. All those things help a ton, so without further ado, let's get into it. So today I want to talk about Universal Studios in Orlando, Florida. Universal is one of the most fun theme parks that I've ever been to, and in fact, it was the one that I wanted to go to most as a kid. They've got solid food, they have solid atmosphere, they have a lot of fun rides, and they have a lot of fun properties attached to those rides. And they may have my personal favorite franchise of all time, Jurassic Park. So as many fans of the franchise know, Jurassic Park was actually a novel written by Michael Crichton in 1990. So at the time, Universal was in a bidding war against Warner Brothers and Tim Burton, Columbia Pictures and Richard Donner, and 20th Century Fox and Joe Dante. Eventually, after all the bidding was done, Universal won out and they bought the rights for a particular director, Steven Spielberg. Now, even though that Universal and Spielberg ended up getting the rights to film the movie and ultimately produce the movie, I do think it's interesting to consider what it might have been like to have a Tim Burton Jurassic Park movie. Maybe it would have been closer to what the novel was. And if you haven't read the novel, it's absolutely worth your time. Highly recommend reading it. I just read it for the first time this year, and I wish that I wouldn't have waited as long as I did. The film would, of course, go on to release in theaters on June 9th, 1993, and become a legendary piece of cinematic history. Everything from the film's use of CGI to its use of practical effects was cutting edge at the time and really establishes the film as a time capsule for film nuts and for production people as a reminder that this is still kind of the bar for how to best blend practical and CGI stuff. Obviously, over the past, decade or so, 2 decades really now, we've gotten to a spot where we use CGI a whole lot, we rely on practical less, and you're sort of seeing the repercussions of that at this point. There's a lot of conversation around VFX artists and them being overworked and not having enough time to complete projects to the level that they would like to do them. Even most recently, The Flash is a great example of that. It's an example of an unfinished film in terms of the visual effects. When you look at something like Jurassic Park, they knew the limitations of the technology. That technology has since come a whole long way. But with that said, there's still an element to CGI that doesn't allow the viewer to suspend their disbelief. The best version of CGI currently, of course, is Avatar, especially Avatar 2. If you watch that movie, it's very, very difficult to establish what's real, what's not. I mean, obviously, most of the film is CGI, but back in the day, they didn't have technology like they have for Avatar 2. They had what they had, and they used it well. They knew that it was to their advantage to put a lot of those dinosaurs in shadows and to not rely solely on them to put in the shots and the frames. Spielberg knew that in order to sell the shots, in order to sell the dinosaurs as a real threat, that he needed to have practical dinosaurs on set for the actors to interact with. As someone with a phobia of animatronics, to a degree, I should say, it's not so much a phobia. I don't like going on rides where there are big dinosaurs that get, or big creatures, I should say, that get within a foot of my face. That freaks me out. So all that to say, the actors, if they have something like that to actually interact with, then they have something to be scared of. And it shows in the shots, it shows in how they react to things. And even the best actors have a tough time reacting to something that isn't there, or even worse, a tennis ball on like a stick to get their eye line correct. So shifting gears for a moment, I'd like to discuss a big issue that I feel like plagues Universal Studios in Orlando, Florida. The Jurassic Park area of Islands of Adventure opened with that park in 1999, and it's been one of the feature islands that park relies on for the better part of 2 decades now. And what a cool area of the park it was when it opened. Dinosaurs are super cool. People love the idea of going to Jurassic Park, even though it's, sort of plagued with death. But the fact that people could go to a park that they knew, of course, was safe, there's no real dinosaurs there, that's intriguing, that's fun, and it's also a little meta. It's a fictional theme park within a theme park. And for years, the main attraction of Jurassic Park and Islands of Adventure has been the Jurassic Park River Adventure, which is a phenomenal ride. It's really, really fun. I remember going on it as a kid, and I actually just went back to Universal with my wife back in April of this year, and we rode the ride again. And here's what I noticed. What once was this very vibrant and organic ride that you moved along through, you had the iconic music playing, you had this ingenious sound design with all the animatronics to make you feel like you were actually there, even though it's apparent that some of the dinosaurs move a little stiff or whatever. It's still, like I was saying earlier, the fact that you can actually interact with them. They're actually in front of you. You can see them, so their presence is felt. And that's heightened when you are talking about carnivores like the velociraptors or the T-Rex at the end that comes out at you right as you're plummeting down 80 feet getting splashed by water. And for a long time, that was the only attraction until just a couple years ago when Velocicoaster opened in June 10th, 2021. And we loved the Velocicoaster. We got to ride that back in April for the first time. We had a lot of fun on it. It's a good roller coaster, very, very fun roller coaster even. The theming is great. The queue is a lot of fun. It's interactive. It's interesting. You have a lot going on there. But there were a couple things that I just couldn't shake during my visit this past April. The first is a lack of identity, and the second is a lack of care. Without going into too much detail on park maintenance, that's not my area of expertise, so I don't want to harp on it too much. I noticed that on the River Adventure specifically, the animatronics were in really rough shape. One of them was completely gone and swapped out instead for this big crate. The Brachiosaurus, I'm pretty sure is what it was. The Velociraptors just weren't moving, and there was just a noticeable level of deterioration on all of the animatronics. They just look very old, very dated. To make a ride like this worthwhile and to sell what's going on in it, you really need to upkeep those animatronics and make them look fresh. As I mentioned previously, I did get to ride that ride when I was younger, and it felt a lot like how I felt riding Jaws back when I was a little kid. It had that intimidation factor that I was talking about in my Alien video, and if you haven't watched that, you should go watch it. I would appreciate it. But for Universal to have this as sort of their staple Jurassic Park attraction, even still today, I'll get into why I say it's still the staple in just a moment, it's really inexcusable, I think. They really should put more care into the upkeep of those animatronics. And I'll tell you why I feel like there's especially no excuse. So recently, within the past 10 years, there's been a reskin of the Jurassic Park River Adventure in different Universal rides around the world. Most recently, as long as my memory is correct on this, that was in Hollywood, California. They reskinned the ride to feature the Indominus Rex and the Mosasaur at the beginning, and it was just a refresh of the ride. The reason for Jurassic Park River Adventure being in the state that it's currently in, there's 100% an argument to be made that they're not putting the level of detail or care that they should on that ride right now, the level of focus that they need to be putting on that ride due to the fact that there's an inevitable reskin coming, which, fair enough, that's definitely a possibility, and if that's the case, then great, but there's been no formal announcement of that as of yet. So until they make a formal announcement, the criticism is still fair. Now, this sort of bleeds into the second gripe that I have, which is lack of identity. Currently in Orlando specifically, at Islands of Adventure's Jurassic Park area, you have the Jurassic Park River Adventure and the Velocicoaster, which I've mentioned several times already, and each of those exists in different segments of the franchise. One of them exists in sort of the more legacy, area that most people would probably put those original 3 movies in, and then you have the more modern, updated sequel trilogy that came out with Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard, which is fine, and it's dandy, and it's an okay trilogy on its own merits. We're not going to get too much into that today. We're here to talk about the ride at Universal. I think that there's a big problem there, just because you have 2 different franchises essentially trying to coexist, and it's giving the park a lack of focus and lack of clarity to guests visiting. The Velocicoaster, as cool as it is kind of just sidelined over into a corner. It's self-existing as the only area of Jurassic World in the park, which is weird because the rest of Jurassic Park, and as we know it, is themed to that original trilogy. So you have the Discovery Center, which is also due for a refresh, I might add. You have the various restaurants that are there that are all themed around Jurassic Park, not World, and of course the River Adventure. There's also a kids area of Jurassic Park that isn't necessarily themed around anything specific. It's not themed around the Camp Cretaceous kids show that came out a few years back. It's not themed around anything outside of just the fact that it's kind of like dinosaurs for kids, and there's a little pterodon flyer thing that you can take your kids on if you have them. So taking all of that into consideration, would it be smart for Universal to say, okay, we have Jurassic World, and it's almost all themed Jurassic World over in Hollywood. For the US, we're going to keep this within the US for this discussion and argument's sake. And in Orlando, we haven't done much yet outside of Velocicoaster. So would it be smart to brand that park still Jurassic Park? Would it be smart to keep it the Legacy Park? And I think that there's a good argument to be made as to why they should leave it that. Not leave it alone, not keep it unupdated, not ignore it and let it become this awful eyesore that you have to walk through, kind of the way that it is now, but put back in the level of detail that you did when the park opened. Update it with modern animatronics, update it with various dinosaur themed areas around the park. So taking all that into consideration, there is a third thing that Universal has been doing lately that's not attached to a theme park. It is a traveling thing that I actually got to go to in Atlanta, and it's called the Jurassic World Exhibition. Here is what's genius about the Jurassic World Exhibition. It's a little overpriced for the amount of time that you get to spend inside the actual area, but when you're going through, you're completely immersed in Jurassic World. You're immediately greeted by a Brachiosaurus. It gets within feet of your face, and it's this really, really cool thing. You then get to see various dinosaurs as you go through. Most of them are animatronics. It's all very, very visceral and lifelike, and you feel the dinosaur's presence. You feel like you're there. You get to go into a research lab where you have all of these amber mosquitoes along the wall, which is so cool to see for a fan of the franchise or even a fan of the books. And then you have crazy animatronics that probably are at least variations of repeats from various rides that Universal has. You get to go through this Velociraptor section that has all of the Velociraptors sort of muzzled as they were in the movie and as they are in the Velocicoaster queue, with the exception of Blue, who is in a suit, and it's not the most convincing looking thing ever, but it's still fun, it's fun for the kids, whatever. And then you go to an Indominus Rex enclosure, and that animatronic is absolutely crazy. Granted, you only get to see it from the neck up. After that, you go through another little section that has some baby dinosaurs and that sort of thing for the kiddos, and then you get to the end, which is a T-Rex breakout. And oh my gosh, that T-Rex animatronic is phenomenal. It is so cool to look at. It's so much fun to be in the room with that thing. And that's coming from someone, as I mentioned before, who is afraid of large animatronics, at least on some level. And I think that Universal is absolutely sidelining some genius stuff that they already have in motion. They're just not necessarily in the parks or implemented in the parks the way that they could be. So what would it look like if Universal took a walkthrough like Jurassic World Exhibition and applied it in smaller areas, sort of segmented around the Jurassic Park area? And while we're here and changing things for fun's sake, let's go ahead and get rid of Kong Skull Island. Why not? Let's just go ahead and get rid of the, Reign of Kong, that ride. It's, it's one of those kind of throwaway rides that Universal has been doing lately where you get there's probably a dozen or so people in a single ride car, then you go through and you're wearing 3D glasses and, it's screens and it's just like a glorified movie watching experience for 5 minutes. And then that one does, at the end, have a very, very cool Kong animatronic, but you can put that anywhere. You can put that in one of the museum-style things that Universal has, thinking specifically of the horror makeup show that they have. You could, it may not fit in there as is, but you could retrofit it. You could figure out a place to put that thing. That way it doesn't necessarily go to waste, and you can still, use it in some way, but maybe more effectively, because Skull Island is a whole section of the park that is just there, and a lot of people skip over it, or if they don't skip over it, they kind of like it's a one and done if you go back to the park. So what would it look like to do all those things? Maybe you have a T-Rex enclosure and you keep it covered. You could do it strategically. You could make it look like there's foliage over it, or it's overgrown or something like that. That way you're not having to worry about the wear and tear on the animatronics the way that River Adventure has to worry about it, and quite frankly the way that the wear and tear has just exuded itself on that attraction.
That is one big pile of shit.
You could do one that's a T-Rex. You could do one that is a Triceratops, because there used to be a Triceratops experience that you got to go to at Jurassic Park that's no longer there. But it was a really, really cool thing. You could do something with that again. You could do something with velociraptors and actually get to see them trained in some way. And don't make it a guy in a suit. Make it an animatronic. Like Spielberg used animatronics. You guys can make animatronics. I've seen the ones that Universal has made. They're really sick. Have those in different areas of the parks. Make it interactive. Make it actually, when you're walking through Jurassic Park, you feel like you're in Jurassic Park. Right now, it just sort of feels like you're in some weird jungle safari and there's a lot of dinosaur-themed restaurants everywhere. It doesn't feel like Jurassic Park. And then if you get rid of Kong, here's what you could do next. You could make a new attraction themed around Jurassic Park where you get in one of the explorers and you're riding along like they do in the first movie. And yeah, sure, maybe it starts exactly as it does in the movie and you're looking at different dinosaurs on each side and yada yada yada. It's a lot of fun, whatever. But then what if you take it down maybe an avenue that's more akin to the Great Movie Ride with a little more stakes and a little more, action and like bumpiness to the ride, and it feels a little more intense in that sense. But you take it through different scenes of the movie, like maybe you see a guy get actually snatched up and eaten, but not, don't make it gory for the kids, but you know what I'm saying. Like maybe you actually see someone get like pulled behind some bushes by some velociraptors. Maybe you use some of that really crazy de-aging technology they're using with Mark Hamill in Star Wars right now, when you use that on Dr. Grant and Ellie Sattler and Dr. Malcolm. Like, have the characters that make this franchise what it is in the rides. What a concept. I think that Universal, when they initially conceptualized putting a Jurassic Park area in Islands of Adventure, focused too much on the spectacle of having dinosaurs, which is hilarious because that's kind of, what happens in the book. But in this case, it's less about the danger of it all, and it's more about the lack of respect for the characters and the writing that went into making that book what it was. Jurassic Park isn't about the dinosaurs. It's about Malcolm. It's about Grant. It's about Sadler. It's about John Hammond. It's about the people that are actively in the story carrying it along. So they should be present when you're in the Jurassic Park area of the park. Disney does do a good job with this in the sense that they have actors portraying characters. Even in the Star Wars land, which I'm not a super big fan of as a huge Star Wars fan, they have actors walking around. They have Mando now in Disneyland. They have Rey walking around. They have Chewbacca walking around. There's something to that. I think if you had a super funny Jeff Goldblum impersonator, people would eat that up.
Oh, hello. Yes. Okay. Scuba-da-ba-bow.
Universal has Marilyn Monroe. They have characters where you actually see their face. It's an actual actor or actress, and they should do that with more of their properties, and especially Jurassic Park. Make it feel like what it is. And I think that you'll see satisfaction of guests go through the roof if you do that. Recently, Universal did a tribute store inside Universal Studios, all themed around Jurassic Park. And that store is insanely cool. The level of detail that they threw into that store is mind-blowing. And I don't think it's a stretch to ask some of the people that were behind that to do similar things for the park itself in Islands of Adventure. I think that there's great potential there, and I wouldn't be criticizing it the way that I am if I didn't feel that way. And even this criticism is couched by saying it's not that it's a bad park. It's just that it could be so much cooler if you gave it the same level of detail that you give, say, something like Harry Potter. And I don't think that Jurassic Park is the only franchise within Universal Studios that suffers from this issue. I think it's every franchise that they have besides Harry Potter. And I think that we're about to see a shift in that, truthfully. I think with Epic Universe coming in the near future, we're going to see more detail given to at least the new stuff, and I'm hoping that maybe that'll be extended to some of the old stuff as well. So with all that said, this is where I hand it off to you guys. What do you think about Universal Studios and how they've handled Jurassic Park? Are they doing it right? Are they doing it wrong? Are you not a Jurassic Park fan? If you're not, then that's crazy. You should be. And if you're feeling generous, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I'll catch y'all on the next one.